Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're unpacking a blockbuster study recently published in the British Journal of Ophthalmology that throws a massive curveball at one of the most popular classes of drugs on the market today. We are talking about a globally observed analysis that connects the dots between highly effective weight loss medications and, well, your eyesight. If you've ever wondered how large-scale, real-world data can suddenly reveal entirely unexpected connections in modern medicine, you are in the exact right place for this overview of the paper. So let's dive straight into the core question that actually drove researchers to conduct this massive analysis. Can popular weight loss and diabetes drugs impact your vision? Specifically, we're looking at semaglutide. This is the highly effective active ingredient in those household name medications you hear about literally everywhere right now. Millions of people are taking these drugs daily, which is exactly why the researchers wanted to investigate a potential link between these incredibly widespread treatments and a very specific, incredibly serious ocular condition.
Here's our roadmap for today's overview. First, the semaglutide vision study. Second, mining FDA adverse events. Third, formulation risk, Wegovy versus Ozempic. Fourth, sex-specific risk in men. And finally, conclusions and next steps. Let's get right into it.
Part 1. The Semaglutide Vision Study. The specific condition right at the heart of this research is ischemic optic neuropathy, or ION for short. And look, ION isn't just a simple case of dry eyes or temporary blurriness, right? It's a rare but truly vision-threatening complication where blood flow to the optic nerve is disrupted. Recently, the medical community started noticing a kind of worrying trend, basically an anecdotal link between ION and GLP-1 receptor agonists, which is the exact class of drugs containing semaglutide. But, as we know, anecdotes aren't science. Because this complication poses a permanent risk to a patient's sight, researchers recognized an urgent, immediate need to move beyond rumors and really investigate this link on a massive, global, data-driven scale.
Moving on to Part 2, mining FDA adverse events.
To figure out if this vision risk was actually real, the researchers needed data, like a lot of data. You know, when you're tracking a super rare side effect, a standard clinical trial of just a few thousand people might completely miss it. So they turned to the FDA Adverse Event Reporting System, or FAERS. They didn't just pull a few hundred patient files, they sifted through an absolutely astounding 30 million adverse event reports submitted to the FDA between the years 2017 and 2024. By utilizing a public database of this immense magnitude, the researchers built a rock-solid foundation to hunt for statistical signals that smaller traditional trials would simply never ever catch. But obviously, not all 30 million of those reports were about semaglutide. The researchers put this absolute mountain of data through a really rigorous, highly precise filtering process. They systematically stripped away all the noise until they were left with exactly 31,774 specific adverse event cases involving semaglutide. This gave them a highly focused, undeniable pool of data to evaluate the risks. Having a data set this clean and this specific is absolutely crucial when you're trying to establish true medical associations and rule out pure coincidence.
Which brings us to Part 3, formulation risk, Wegovy versus Ozempic.
Now, both Wegovy and Ozempic utilize semaglutide, but they're formulated and prescribed very differently. To compare them, the researchers calculated what's called the reporting odds ratio, or ROR. Think of this metric as like a volume knob on a safety alarm within the database. A higher ROR means much louder alarm bells going off for that specific drug. Look at the stark contrast in the findings here. Ozempic triggered the alarm with an ROR of 18.81 for this vision complication, but Wegovy, it demonstrated a vastly stronger signal, practically blasting the alarm with an ROR of 74.89. The initial raw data clearly indicated that the signal for developing ION was overwhelmingly stronger for patients who were on the Wegovy formulation.
But raw reporting numbers alone don't definitively prove the case, do they? In observational data, you always have to worry about confounding factors. Maybe the patients on one drug are just older, or maybe they have other underlying health issues that skew the data. So the researchers put this to the test by running a multivariable regression analysis. The absolutely crucial point here is that even after rigorous mathematical adjustment to weed out the noise, the signal held up perfectly. The multivariable regression confirmed a much greater risk with Wegovy versus Ozempic, resulting in an adjusted odds ratio of 4.74. To put that into perspective, this means that within this vast data set, the risk of this severe visual complication was nearly 5 times greater with the Wegovy formulation than with Ozempic. No way around it, that's a huge finding.
All right, Part 4, sex-specific risk in men.
When the research team decided to stratify the adverse event data by sex, one incredibly high number practically jumped right off the page, 116.37. That was the reporting odds ratio found specifically in men. Just as we saw a massive spike when isolating the Wegovy formulation, the raw reporting data was screaming a remarkably strong signal. Men taking semaglutide were reporting this vision-threatening complication at exceptionally high rates compared to the general baseline.
And just like before, they put this raw initial signal to the ultimate test. They ran a multivariable regression to compare men versus women, carefully controlling for those outside variables that might artificially inflate the numbers. The analysis confirmed a staggering disparity. There's a significantly greater risk in men versus women, yielding an adjusted odds ratio of 3.33. This is highly actionable medical data, folks. Effectively, it proves that even after adjusting for other factors, men in this data set had over 3 times the risk of experiencing ION compared to women taking the exact same medication.
Finally, Part 5, Conclusions and Next Steps.
So what do the authors ultimately make of these 2 massive spikes in the data? Well, they summarize their core takeaway in the paper with this statement. These findings highlight a potential dose-dependent safety concern. Why do they specifically point out dose dependency? Think back to our formulation differences earlier. Wegovy is typically prescribed at much higher doses to optimize weight management, whereas Ozempic is typically prescribed at lower doses for diabetes management. Because the vision risk spiked so violently in the Wegovy group, researchers hypothesized that the risk of ION might go up right alongside the dosage level. Basically, the more semaglutide in the system, the higher the potential strain on the optic nerve's blood supply.
Because ischemic optic neuropathy is so serious and can literally lead to permanent vision loss, the authors are calling for 3 immediate next steps. First, an urgent prospective evaluation is needed. This study was an observational analysis looking backward at historical data, right? To be absolutely certain of the mechanism, the medical community needs controlled, forward-looking clinical trials. Second, this data needs to start guiding future prescribing practices today. Doctors must start having more informed, really nuanced risk-benefit conversations with their patients, especially men who are considering higher dose formulations like Wegovy. And third, these findings absolutely must inform global regulatory policy moving forward.
Which leaves us with a massive question to ponder. As these highly effective, incredibly popular GLP-1 medications continue to skyrocket in global popularity, how are health agencies going to react to this new data? Will regulatory guidelines shift to actively protect patients from this complication? Or will this severe vision risk just become accepted fine print on the medication bottle? It is a stark reminder that even with modern miracle drugs, ongoing, large-scale data analysis is the only real way to uncover the full story. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Until next time, stay curious.